You know, the politician character in Nightmare Before Christmas who has the two faces?
Oh, the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor.
Yeah.
That's who JD Vance reminded me of.
Welcome to Millennial, the home of pretend adulting and real debate talk. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
And we are coming to y'all right after the VP debate between Vance and Walz. And following our discussion on the VP debate, this week's After Dark will find us discussing the recent Chapel Roan drama. She tried to take this both sides approach to the forthcoming election, and it went pretty bad for her. So we'll share what she said, how she tripled down, and our thoughts on the whole ordeal. So that'll be available at patreon.com/millennial. And speaking of our Patreon, Bay and higher patrons are receiving this year's physical gift in the mail, including Zach, who I just saw check in. So once you get your shirt, please tag us on social media and we will be more than happy to share the photo, just like we did of our cute Alabama sunflower, Zach. I forgot I meant to wear my shirt tonight in celebration of our listeners getting it, but
Aww.
I only came with my hair as Walz hat.
Well, yeah, I think that's reason enough to celebrate.
And actually, John, one of our listeners, wrote in with some listener feedback I wanted to bring up, and he's listening live tonight. He shared a little extra insight on last week's discussion about keeping an eye out for trigger warnings. He said, I am listening to the ep on trigger warnings and wanted to provide the PSA for everyone and parents. IMDb has a content advisory for each movie and show. It says in exact detail and context what happens in terms of violence, sex, etc., but it hides items and notes spoiler warnings. It also omits character names when possible. Just go to the movie or show and scroll down to Parents Guide.
Nice.
Good tip. Thank you, John. All right, so that's all the business out of the way. It's 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday night. We were just watching the debate. Laura, Pam, what are your key takeaways? B.R. Anderson Cooper and Dana Bash.
My key takeaways are that I don't think debates change anyone's mind at this point. I mean, I feel like if your mind wasn't changed by the Harris-Trump debate, this debate certainly wasn't going to convince you of that. A lot less fireworks between these two than I think people were expecting. I was watching on CNN, and it really felt like Jake Tapper and Dana Bash wanted these two to get really, really nasty with each other. And not to say that there wasn't some of that, but it was not as bombastic as some of the displays that we've seen in the past in debates. So yeah, honestly, I don't think this moves the needle. It should, but it won't.
Well, and I think that makes sense in the grand scheme of things, because really what they're there to do is to double down on the policy of their prospective candidates. So it's not really very exciting because a lot of it is what we've already heard before. And I guess to the Republicans' point, they really it seems like Vance and Trump are finally aligned on their views, or most of, at least for now, because I think that was the big faux pas that we saw in the last debate, which is that it seems like one candidate was saying one thing and another was saying something else. And you want your VP and your vice presidential candidate you want your vice presidential candidate and your presidential candidate to be on the same page. So I could tell where they had made a concerted effort to kind of reroute. I don't know if you both got that same vibe.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
JD saw what Trump almost had done to Pence.
Well, and Pam, I think you're being generous. You're saying Trump and Vance came into an alignment. Vance just moved into Trump's orbit and got in line.
So true. Yeah, basically he said, "You better get in line, or I'm picking someone else."
Right. Or I'm burning every copy of your book. Hillbilly, whatever a G.
Now it's too late for that. At this point, Trump would just inspire a mob to come and attack him, because literally that's what he did to Mike Pence. So yeah, I think JD is a little scared. He's in too deep.
He said, "I'm going to get in line so I don't fall out."
Yeah.
And even though they are in alignment, at times Vance was coming off to me like he actually wasn't running with Trump when it came to topics like gun violence and abortion. Trump will try to throw himself as far right as possible, whereas Vance was like, you know what? Governor Walz and I actually agree on this topic or this topic or this policy issue or that policy issue. Now, of course, he doesn't have the actual resume material to back up the things that he was saying, but he was very much trying to agree with him, and vice versa. Walz says, you know, I agree with Vance here and there. Like Laura, you said, it was more civil. They were agreeing with each other, and it actually kind of reminded me of presidential debates pre-Trump, or maybe other vice presidential debates.
No, I mean, look at the Obama-Romney debate. Look at the Obama-McCain debates for really recent examples of the fact that people who have strong disagreements can have civil discourse. And yeah, it'll still get testy sometimes. And each side is going to have their own prepared zingers for a debate. That just comes with the territory. Debate actually has very little to do with policy and much more to do with theater. It's literally a theatrical performance. It's like a meme mill.
Do you think that's why Vance broke out the eyeliner?
Yeah.
For the special occasion.
I did think that his eyes were looking particularly striking tonight.
I was kind of distracting, especially because he kept making like faces at the camera, kind of like he wanted to become a meme.
Yeah, he did keep making awkward eye contact with the camera when he was checking the time on the clock. That was my other favorite thing is like, while Walz is talking, while he's talking, he's like repeatedly checking the camera, or not the camera. He's repeatedly checking the timer, so that he can see how much time he has left to fill, because he doesn't have enough content to fill the 2 minutes that they give him.
Yeah.
Case in point, there was one
like, I'll take that 20 seconds. Like,
yeah,
exactly.
You're done.
Yeah. You know, you two are very lucky to have not seen JD Vance often, it sounds like, because it seems like he is always wearing guy liner, like always wearing the guy liner. And between that and the pink tie, I feel like he may have been trying to tell us something tonight, but that's besides the point for today's episode.
Hey, you know what? Good for him.
Good for him.
Yeah,
he wants some depth
no judgment
eyes.
from me. You wear that guy liner, baby. Just like, you don't need to run for executive office. Like,
Walz did seem a little nervous up front, maybe the first 10 minutes, which actually I kind of observed about Kamala too. Walz was umming a lot. I don't know. He just looked nervous. I had seen CNN commentators prior to the start of the debate point out that Vance has done a lot of TV interviews, larger TV interviews, whereas Walz has not. And maybe that had set up Vance for a good debate performance. Vance did good. He wasn't embarrassing like Trump. We're talking about this being a more civil debate. There weren't those crazy, they're eating the cats and dogs moments like we got from the Trump-Harris debate. Walz didn't even really try to bait him into anything. Like Harris did incredibly well with the crowd sizes a few weeks ago.
Well, I think it was way more subtle on Vance's part this time around. And I do appreciate that Walz did call it out, to your point about, you know, like it wasn't as blatant as they're eating cats and dogs, which would have made for a better soundbite. But I do appreciate that Walz made it a point a number of times to point out that like this toxic rhetoric divides us and it alienates us and it breeds more xenophobia than what is necessary in this country. Because a lot of what Vance was bringing up as part of his platform was the fact that Americans are suffering as a result of immigration, which is simply not the case.
The thing about this, I feel, is that JD Vance came into this debate knowing that he's not very popular and he's not very well liked, but knowing that he was going to be on the stage with another Midwestern politician, right? JD Vance is from Ohio. Of course, Tim Walz is from Minnesota. And I think what he was trying to do was make himself seem a lot more reasonable than he actually is and than what he's actually proposed. And he's trying to make people have the thought cross their minds that like, oh, these two don't seem that different.
And I think
they're
you could
agreeing
see
with each
that.
other, you know?
Well, I think you could see that strategy, to your point, in just his opening statement alone. I think that he was really trying to paint a picture of himself that was on par with what has endeared Tim Walz to a lot of Democrats and a lot of like even like mid to left leaning people, right? That he also comes from a rural community, that he also was like lower class, that he's also struggled, that he hasn't had anything handed to him, that he's worked hard. I think that all of that was very deliberate, in addition to what you were saying, Laura, about how a number of times both of them did say, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said. And especially when you look at the Republican candidacy, like I think it like that benefits them more than it does the Democrats to say, hey, like I actually don't think that you're that crazy when you say this, but I think that
Yeah.
we're going about it the wrong way. Like that harkens back more to the era of like Republicans that maybe our parents grew up with, you know,
Yeah.
that were much more moderately leaning, more reasonable, more sensible.
And how political debates in America, whether you're running for president, running for office or not, should be. We should be able to
Right.
have these conversations where we can kind of meet in the middle and then not go at each
Yeah.
other's throats. But with the debates, unfortunately, you have to draw clearer lines because somehow there's a lot of undecided voters in this country who need clearer separation between the two parties. And I'm not sure they were getting that tonight. The lines weren't as stark as they were between Trump and Harris.
Yeah, I will say I highly doubt that nearly as many people watched this debate,
Yeah.
and that was probably part of the calculation too, is neither campaign probably wants to create any damaging waves for themselves out of a VP debate when there is a lot going on right now. There's Iran attacking Israel. There's this port strike that is about to smack us all in the face. We're, right on the heels of a devastating hurricane that really impacted so much of the Southeast. So, like, I think it was maybe a calculated move to not make this debate super ugly.
Yeah. I'm just seeing on the New York Times, they're tracking each other's attack time of the other candidate. Walz attacked Vance for only 1:15. Vance attacked Walz for only 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So they are two Midwestern buddies, these two tonight. But great
They're
points,
so
Laura.
polite.
And also an excellent summary of what's been going on in the last few days without us having to talk about it at length.
Exactly. It's what I'm here for.
There were a couple moments where, of course, we have to roll our eyes. JD Vance called carbon emissions weird science, which was very frustrating.
I'm like, that I don't know if you think you're reclaiming the word weird, but that's not how this works.
I definitely got that vibe.
Yeah.
Who would have thought he would have been the first one to use the phrase weird during the debate tonight? I don't even think Walz used it at all. We're recording before the debate fully ended, but yeah, that was a surprise. That came up during the portion of the debate on climate change, of course, and Vance attacked the left for not generating more energy domestically as a way to fight climate change. Walz said at one point during the section that our number one export can't be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. Very good line.
Yeah.
And he was talking about rising sea levels.
Issues like this where Walz could really lean on his background as a Midwestern governor, someone who grew up decidedly middle class, a public servant long before he got into politics. I feel like those types of stories where he was able to bring in what community means to him and the impacts that these things are having on communities like his. I feel like those were the moments where he shined the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's hopeful too, as maybe as an undecided voter, if you did tune in, to hear about the success that he's had in his home state, because that is normally when you hear, candidates talk, they're talking on a national scale, and it takes so long for that to trickle down to small communities. But Tim Walz is impacting small communities purely by what he's implemented as governor. So Yeah, that would be like if I was undecided, I would feel more hopeful hearing about how they've been able to implement things like, more housing, for example, more opportunity for people to get in on the ground floor as first time homeowners.
Yeah. Walz had strong answers, I thought, about immigration, the border crisis, abortion, Obamacare. He also brought up Vance's admission that he makes up stories. Vance, makes up stories to get the media to pay attention to him, which Vance didn't address at all. That was a slip up that Vance offered up on a Sunday morning talk show a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. You mean when he was like, if I have to make up stories to get attention on these issues, then I will? Like,
yeah, right.
What?
Right. So Walz called that out, and then Vance didn't address it.
I thought it was interesting that there wasn't like more back and forth on some of those things. I think, Andrew, you also called out that Vance didn't take the bait, about Tiananmen Square and how Walz, admittedly says he was a knucklehead and he misspoke, is what he
Yeah,
says
he
about
used
being
that
there.
word. He said he was a knucklehead.
Yeah. I thought that was maybe a more awkward moment, not the strongest moment. I think there was a way to own that without making it, I don't know, quite as uncomfortable. Like,
yes.
I mean, you're literally talking about the guy who's standing on the stage with you who lies all the time. If his mouth is moving, he's lying. He lies about his record. He lies about what he thinks. He lies about the things that he's saying other politicians and other legislations have done, and things that he claims that Trump did, which he definitely didn't do. So Vance is just a liar. And I feel like there was maybe a better opportunity there to be like, is this the lie that everyone's concerned about?
Right. And we don't even know if it was a lie. So just so everybody knows, Walz had claimed that he was in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square protests, but that was undercut by old newspaper reports. I agree with what you're saying, Laura. I think this was Walz's weakest answer. Like, they gave him an opportunity to try and correct himself. He danced around the question, and then the debate anchors followed up again, and he still didn't have a good answer. And I think the most awkward moment of that for me was he probably had a full minute to respond, and he maybe took 20 seconds of it to respond. And again, it was a terrible response. And then there was just like this awkward silence. And Vance didn't push back at all either. I mean, maybe he knows too that there's no point in calling him out for this, because I think Walz had just misspoken when he said he was in Hong Kong during these protests, when he was actually there 3 months later. I think it was. It was later in the summer. His only defense was he was like mixing up his summer timeline. And I don't know, that seems believable to me. Walz strikes me as a very believable, down-to-earth person. Way more so than Vance and Trump.
Yeah.
He seems more homegrown and down-to-earth than Kamala does.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I also just kind of feel like this would have been a good thing to get ahead of so that it wouldn't be such a prominent focus in the debate. Or if they did ask about it, he could just repeat what he had already said and move on with it, you know?
Where was the debate prep for that question? Because they should have seen that one coming.
They had to know. They had to know he was going to be asked that. And I mean, that also could have been part of the strategy. Like, I noticed, I was watching CNN before the debate started, and I noticed that in the spin room, Democrats were definitely lowering expectations for Walz. Like you said, Andrew, JD Vance has had more experience, sort of like in the larger media circuit sphere than Walz has had. Walz has kind of been absent in a lot of ways. I think they've had him more on the trail, meeting with people directly, and less like in front of CNN and Fox and whoever else. So I don't know if that was a strategy to like make it more difficult for Vance to prep for the debate because they didn't have as much material on Walz to use in their prep, or if it was because Walz isn't the best debater and they were trying to lower expectations to account for that. He's a great campaigner, but I don't I don't get the sense from this that he's like the world's best debater.
No, I agree. Vance said, and this is getting at a point I brought up earlier about Vance almost coming off like he wasn't running with Trump. Vance said that Republicans have work to do on abortion trust, which I thought was a surprising comment from him. And he said it multiple times. We have to earn back the trust of Republicans.
Yeah. That was like probably the most striking moment up until the point that we watched. To me, I don't know what's happened since we started recording, but it definitely, to me, feels like they're trying to do some damage control, or whoever was helping him prep was setting him up to do a little bit of damage control on this end, which makes a lot of sense because we've seen, based on how, like voting has gone in a lot of these conservative states, that when it gets thrown back into people's hands, even in the most Republican parts of our country, people are voting for the option to choose themselves and wanting to keep the government out of their choices.
Yeah.
And I think that this was a really smart move on his part, whether Trump corroborates or not based on any rallies he does between now and election day is a whole different story. But just based on tonight's debate, I thought this was a really smart move.
Yeah. Well, and I think Vance is like, he's a slippery dude, man, because he did do a good job of making himself sound more reasonable on this issue. He brought up that Ohio, he is the senator. He is one of the two senators from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio voted to enshrine abortion rights in its state constitution. And he flat out said, yeah, my state chose to do something that I didn't agree with. And based on that, he talked about Republicans needing to do a better job of reaching out and getting the voters to trust them on this issue again. And then he started rolling out examples of like very progressive proposals that Democrats have tried to champion for the longest and that Republicans repeatedly rail against, things like better assistance for families to be able to afford their basic fucking necessities, or better healthcare options that don't discriminate on the basis of pre-existing conditions. They got into this with healthcare as well, where JD is like simultaneously wanting to roll us back to the way healthcare used to be, but saying, don't worry, we'll protect you if you have a pre-existing condition.
Thanks to Obamacare.
It was just like, it was so much like, you know what it made me think of? You know, the politician character in Nightmare Before Christmas who has the two faces?
Oh, the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor.
Yeah.
That's who JD Vance reminded me of tonight.
Which honestly, very smart, because again, like if you're coming into this just having heard like the biggest buzzworthy clips from JD Vance, all you know about him is that he hates childless cat ladies and he doesn't believe you're real family unless like you and your like not same-sex partner have like physically produced a child together.
Yeah.
Through sexual intercourse. That's like the bare bones of what everybody knows. And so, yeah, like to your point, Laura, I do think that I think they made a concerted effort to make sure that he came across more reasonable. And that's kind of terrifying because it just proves that he can be trained, unlike Trump, right? And we kind of saw the same thing happen with Mike Pence, where Mike Pence was like the more even-tempered of the both of them. And that proved to be a pretty deadly combination in the end. So, it feels like the same old playbook, but in a different way.
And honestly, I feel like JD Vance might be playing his own game too in trying to preserve his own political legacy because
Yeah.
he's not a stupid person, and he has to know that unless they win this election, this is going to be a stink that he's never going to be able to get off.
Yeah. And he has clearly flipped on Trump over the years. They were brought up at the debate, these comments he's made about Trump in the past. If when Trump loses this election next month, he's going to flip again so damn quick on Trump. So damn quick, just like Pence did. I was really hoping for Tim Walz to bring up the fact that Pence was not standing where JD Vance was tonight. And thank goodness Walz did towards the end of the debate. And I was so glad that that got brought up because that tells you everything there is to know about Donald Trump. Not even his right-hand man, his VP from 2016 to 2020 could run with him again. I just think that's the only thing we should be talking about when during these debates. I wish Walz brought it up more, but I'm glad he brought it up once. I think that just says everything.
He should have shown up with like a milk carton that had like a missing picture of Mike Pence.
Have you seen this man? Oh my gosh.
Last seen not endorsing Donald Trump, as he has said
That's
on
so
camera.
funny.
And then also Walz had asked Vance, did Trump lose the election? And Vance danced around it. And Walz replied, that is a damning non-answer. You know, we've been talking about how Vance kind of stepped off the typical Trump talking points tonight, but don't you ever get out of line when it comes to the election being stolen from Trump. It was stolen from Trump. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Trump did not lose the election.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that the point of how many lifelong Republicans have come out in support of Harris in the last couple of months. I couldn't believe that that didn't get brought up again.
We're almost so used to people turning against Trump that it's not a good talking point anymore. Everybody's so used to it. I mean, we're not, but I guess independent voters or people who are undecided, that's not a convincing argument for them anymore because we keep seeing all these endorsements from people who should be endorsing Trump actually endorsing Kamala Harris. It's like, why can't we just focus on this all the time? I feel like that says it all.
Well, it's because their master plan is not to appeal to undecided voters, not really. Their plan is all of the fuckery that they planted at the state level in many of these state legislatures in their board of elections. They're hoping to be able to throw things in their favor that way, since they couldn't fuck around last time. So that's why I predicted the last time we talked about this that I think it could easily be a full week before we get results, if not longer. I think it's going to take a long time because there is a lot of fuckery happening at the state level.
Well, whenever the call is eventually made, I hope, Laura, you're actually awake this time for the big announcement, because Pam and I just hated that you slept through history.
Just didn't like knowing where you were. Like, didn't like knowing that we didn't know where you were.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, has her home been firebombed yet?
Pretty much. We're just codependent. We needed our third.
You know that great video of Kamala on the phone with her wired headphones because she doesn't like Bluetooth? We did it, Joe. Laura slept through that iconic moment in history. It's so sad.
That's
like
true.
You watch that every time I watch that
that
video, I just think about how Laura was sleeping during her story.
Hey, you know what? I think Kamala might have been sleeping right before that video too.
All right, well, we're going to talk about some other moments from the debate, but first we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. CBS News was not doing live fact-checking to Walz and Vance's faces like we saw at the ABC News debates, at least not as vigorously as ABC News did it. CBS told everybody, we're going to do the fact checking online. All you have to do is scan this QR code that's on the screen, and our 20 journalists will be taking care of the fact checking for us. I am a little unsure of what to make of this because I thought the ABC News fact checking was so good. But on the other hand, if you want to get in as much substance and debate as possible, maybe you do want to pull back some of the fact checking. I love fact checking, don't get me wrong, but I think this kind of is a decent middle ground.
Yeah, I think that the ABC moderators did a really good job of kind of like inserting the fact checking in a quick way. I guess like to your point, it left getting rid of that entirely left more room for rebuttals because I think they like basically had an opportunity to rebuttal twice for everything. Which we didn't get to see much of in the presidential debate. You know, it wasn't just like, would you like to rebuttal this statement? Like a lot of times it was like, would you like to rebuttal the rebuttal? So I don't know. I guess like it does leave a room for them to speak, but I did appreciate the in like the live fact checking. I think that made for some of like the bigger moments in the presidential debate. And I also think that like for people that don't have a full crazy setup like we do when we're watching, I know when I'm watching these things, like I have my computer out, I have my phone out, like I am, you know, like I have my own little newsroom. Most people don't have that. So it's like why, who's gonna like QR code scan and check to see what they're fact checking.
Yeah. Scan the QR code 20 feet away from your couch.
To that point, I always go to PolitiFact and I like watch their fact checking live, which is the Poynter Institute's page.
For a journalist like Pam, that's her porn, live fact checking on
Pretty
the web.
Much, yeah. Sometimes it takes a little longer to happen, but I always know that they're not going to bullshit me at the Poynter Institute.
It takes you a little longer. I would have thought it helped speed things up for you.
No, sometimes you got to refresh a few times for it to pop up, but
you don't realize the joke I'm making, but we'll just move on. Okay. We're professionals here.
Sorry. It's late.
I mean, honestly, I love fact checking, and I thought last time was great. This time I felt like it was a little bit disappointing that they weren't doing it because I think it allowed for more dodging of questions even than last time, which is crazy to say. It's just that we had two candidates on the stage this time who sounded sane and lucid. But I think at the end of the day, fact checking during a debate is great and everything. And I love that the media has finally gotten around to doing that in one way or another. But I don't think it matters if they can't do it across the board in their other coverage, because their general day-to-day coverage is, I think, something that has more potential to move the needle than a debate performance, because debates are not real life. People don't talk like that to each other when they're discussing issues, and it's theater. It's all performance. That's why I don't think anyone walked into this debate or even the last one and walked out having done a 180.
One of Vance's weaker moments, speaking of fact checking, was the CBS News anchors called him out for something, and Vance said, quote, "The rules were that you weren't going to fact check me," which is like,
yeah,
they got to come up with another phrase rather than admitting that they are lying and they're being fact checked in real time. Like, don't say the rules were you weren't going to fact check me. That just implies you know you are lying and now you're being called out for it. Let's talk about gun control. So Vance proposed increased security in schools, and he said we need stronger doors and stronger windows, and also a heavier security presence at the school. I thought the strong windows comment was especially outrageous. We know that this is a talking point that the right's been bringing up for a while. Oh, we can't do anything about the guns, so we just gotta put more guns in the schools and put guns in churches and make those beautiful big windows in the churches bulletproof to avoid any issues. Like, just completely idiotic ideas for reducing gun violence in this country. And Walz had some great responses here, bringing up most uses of guns in rural Minnesota happen at the home, stuff like that. It was really frustrating to see, because who wants this? Who wants schools to be turned into fortresses, as I think Walz had brought up?
Well, and this also doesn't work for all schools. Like, I think about my high school and also my middle school. It was an open campus. A lot of California schools are open campuses. You know,
sunshine all year, baby.
Outdoors.
We don't need to be indoors.
Like you literally are walking outside to get from building to building.
We've seen those schools
classes.
In the movies. They look cool.
And it's so, like, they are cool, but like, it just, what are you going to do? You're going to barb wire like the entire surrounding perimeter and then have everybody go through a metal detector? That seems really extreme. You know?
Yeah.
But also, like, if anything, like, okay, sure, like maybe you put in stronger windows, but also why can't you do that and also enact stricter gun laws?
That's the thing. Like, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
It's like,
why not both?
Fine. Yeah, you want to talk about better security measures for schools? Cool. I'm down with that. I don't know if I'm down with it to be as militaristic as some people imagine it should be. But yeah, fine. Better security, all for it. But why can't we also strengthen our gun laws?
I still think even the strengthening of the schools idea is idiotic, because as April's bringing up, who's listening live right now on our Patreon, where are they going to get all the money to fund that? My school has beautiful doors with windows from the 70s that go down to the handle that anyone could break open. Replacing all the doors in my whole district would be insanely expensive, and we're operating at a major deficit because our state took away funding for public schools.
Yep.
Not to mention, teachers are paying for their own supplies.
Yeah, I feel you. My high school is over 100 years old. Over 100.
It's just
not practical.
Yeah. And it's like,
it's not.
And I come from a wealthy community. Maybe the parents will chip in. Honestly, parents are probably going to be lobbying for stricter gun laws, if anything, over here. But like, push come to shove, they would chip in. You can't say the same for other school districts. And it's unfair to leave that to the communities to fund either.
And where does it end? You're going to start having cops escort kids to the school bus? You're going to have cops inside the school buses?
The cops in my hometown aren't busy enough to do anything else, so they might as well just go protect the schools. But
yeah, I mean,
I digress.
Also, like, all the security in the world does nothing when the call is coming from inside the house, which is so often what's happening here.
And we saw that with Uvalde, too.
Yeah.
They're like Texas is like an open carry state, right?
Yep.
And they were not prepared.
Mm-mm. I mean, look at what just happened here in Georgia a few weeks ago.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, it was that kid's it was his first day at that new school. His first day going to school there, and he brought a fucking semi-automatic weapon with him. 14 years old. His dad got it for him as a Christmas present.
As Walz said during the debate, sometimes it's just the guns. And actually, CBS did press Walz on his stance on AR-15s. I didn't know this. Walz at one point was against banning AR-15s. He changed his position on that. The CBS anchors said why. And Walz said very matter-of-factly and bluntly, I met with the Sandy Hook parents. My opinion, my stance on this has changed. I was like, oh, that was refreshingly honest.
Yeah. I wish that was all it took for people, everybody in this country, to realize that that's what we needed. But the truth of the matter is, we parade those Sandy Hook parents out every few years and opinions don't change. And it's really sad.
Yeah. Any other points?
Yeah, Roshni is calling out, thank God Walz pushed back on the mental health excuse. Vance did try to go down the usual playbook that the pro-gun lobby likes to use when talking about this, in trying to pin a lot of it on mental health. And there are many, many people with mental health issues in this country, and most of them don't kill other people.
They're not a threat. Yeah.
So yeah, No, it was great to see him point that out.
So overall, like we said at the top of this discussion, it wasn't a needle moving debate. Maybe it could have been a little more, but especially when we're talking about the VP debate, it's really not going to move the needle. That said,
No.
I think we were all looking forward to it. I think I was expecting a little more flamboyancy from Walz, because if you see him on the campaign trail, he's a happy-go-lucky, down-to-earth, jolly guy. I mean, we saw this parodied on SNL this past weekend with Jim Gaffigan. Is that his name?
Yeah.
He's playing Tim Walz on SNL this season. And that's the Walz I was expecting a little more of, along with a Walz who was cracking a couple more jokes. Now, there are several serious things going on, but at the same time, there's still room for those lighter or jabbier type moments. So I don't know. I think the general consensus I'm seeing online and amongst people I talk to is the debate was actually kind of a draw. I think that's where I'm landing on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think once Walz got warmed up, and Laura pointed this out too, she texted both of us that as soon as he got a little more angry, he got a little more feisty, and I think that ended up helping him a lot. And as a result of that, I think he was pretty on par with. I mean, you can tell Vance has a lot of experience on the main stage, and you know that is to be expected. That was to be expected. So I think that the fire really helped Walz kind of make it more even.
Yeah. It was just, it's uncomfortable seeing rhetoric, like the rhetoric coming out of JD Vance's mouth, be normalized in such a way. Because if you came into this with no prior exposure to this person or to American politics and what it's like right now, I could see why you could be pretty easily fooled into thinking that JD Vance just seemed like a normal human being. I think that actually leaves me feeling a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the abortion talk too, to that
Yeah.
point. Like that was really like my mom came in and she was watching with me, and I was like, that is such a smart play, but it's terrifying.
And then you were like, "Mom, get out of here! I'm watching live fact checking. This is a private
Then
moment for me."
she wants to like talk it through, and I'm like, I gotta do this the right way, ladies. So
it does make me wonder, because of how Vance did, it does make me wonder, will this inspire Trump to actually debate Kamala Harris again? Or will this be the final debate this election cycle as it is currently looking like it'll be?
I
Maybe
feel like
this will inspire Trump.
I think the only reason he would debate her again would be if there was some benefit in it for him. I feel like as long as he doesn't see the benefit opportunity, he won't.
Well, he also thinks that he won. So why would he? Like, he's told himself that lie enough that he believes it at this point.
Yeah.
Those are our thoughts on the debate for now. Coming up in After Dark, like I shared at the top of the show, we're going to talk about Chappell Roan. Going to continue this political discussion because she's been in hot water over the last week, and we'll talk about her 3 comments in which she just kept digging deeper and deeper. And we'll also use this as an opportunity to talk about celebrity endorsements. So that is coming up this week.
After Dark is part of Mega Millennial, which you get every week when you're a patron or Apple Podcast subscriber. It's also ad-free because we prefer your support over working with advertisers. Visit patreon.com/millennial to pledge today, or Apple Podcast users can tap into the show and subscribe to the Mega Millennial feed.
And other Patreon benefits include recording studio access, monthly variety shows, access to our planning meetings, and starting this month, we are launching a new benefit in which we take episodes of Smart Mouths out of the vault and release them into the Patreon feed. And as an added perk with this benefit, we will be sharing the planning docs for these episodes as well, which we have never done before because we didn't have a Patreon back in the day. So you can check that all out at patreon.com/millennial. Time for recommendations.
I want to recommend an anime that just came out this last week called Uzumaki. It is a Japanese horror anime that is based on the manga of the same name illustrated by Junji Ito. And it is a horror anime, which is right up my alley, and it's perfect timing for spooky season. It's basically about a town of people who slowly go insane over increasing obsessions with these spiral shapes that they keep seeing everywhere, including in their own bodies. So the first episode dropped. It does air live on Adult Swim on Sunday nights, but it comes out on Max the following day. Or I should have rephrased that. It comes out on Adult Swim Saturday nights and on Max on Sundays. It's really good.
And I wanted to recommend Nobody Wants This on Netflix. It's also a TV show. It's about 10 episodes long, but it's a romantic comedy and the episodes are about 30 minutes. So it's a really quick binge. This stars Kristen Bell and Adam Brody. So two very familiar faces for millennials far and wide. And Kristen Bell stars as this like unlucky in love, dates a lot of losers podcast host. And she ends up hitting it off with Adam Brody's character, who's a rabbi. And the story just goes from there. But it's just really sweet and really fun and really charming. And the chemistry between Adam Brody and Kristen Bell is off the charts. And if you're a rom-com fan, don't sleep on this because you'll just absolutely devour it. It's really good.
Sweet. For my recommendations this week, I actually want to offer a couple of PSAs that should be helpful to people. First of all, U.S. passports can now be renewed online. So if your passport is coming up for renewal, do check that out. Great little quality of life update for all of us Americans. Also, the U.S. government is once again offering free at-home COVID tests. They just kicked this program off again about a week ago. Great timing with fall and winter upon us. So just like previous times, you can get 4 COVID tests for free. Just go to covidtests.gov to get yours.
And listen up, pals. We do have a few reminders to give you before we wrap up today. Make sure you're following the show in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review in Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Also, don't forget we're now releasing video episodes on YouTube.
To stay in touch with us, email millennialshow@gmail.com or visit millennialshow.com. While you're there, you'll also find links to all of our various social media channels, so please give us a follow on all of those. Spotify users can also leave feedback directly within an episode.
After Dark starts in a moment for patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.